So, cannibalism, Wendigos, and the myths and truths that arose from it is today's topic. The other day, I was watching a video about Until Dawn, which, spoiler alerts, contains Wendigos. And I'd never heard of a Wendigo. I was like, what the fuck is this? I don't know it. I don't know what this
So
is about, but it's like a mythical thing. I was like, podcast.
let's go. Yeah.
That's
So
basically how we got to this topic.
yeah, that's how we kind of got to it. We decided we were gonna keep a mythical plus historical, I guess. I don't know because there's always history, and myth is basically history. So
Yes, it's always connected.
so to know more about Wendigos, one should know about cannibalism as well. So you guys will understand later why. Some of you probably already know, some of you don't. So the word cannibalism derives from the Spanish word canibales, or something along those lines, which was the name given by the Spanish to the Carib people tribe of the West Indies, or more precisely South. They're in South America. The Carib, or as they're sometimes called, I'm still not sure which one is which, to be fair, but they're called Canib, which I'm assuming that's where the name,
Cannibal.
cannibals came from. So the people were also known actually to have an expansive territory they lived in, which mainly consisted of the northern areas of Brazil and Venezuela. I might even actually be able to show you sort of approximate area on my screen because I'm in this game that has a map, which is very cool. So sort of that area over there to the side, right? And it mainly consists of the northern areas of Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia. So basically, the ancestors of the cool drug lords that keep getting more and more TV shows about them on Netflix, right?
Okay,
Keep seeing,
yeah.
either hearing of them or stuff like that, right? I don't know. I wanted to name one, but then like the only thing that came to my mind was El Poncho, and I'm like, that probably is not a name, and probably just means something dumb.
Probably, I don't know. I don't watch a lot of shows lately.
Yeah, same. Haven't watched for a while. So the reason the word exists is because those tribesmen were known to have fought, enslaved, and then eaten their victims or enemies. They also colonized some of the Caribbean islands, which is where they were assumed to have met for the first time with the Europeans. Although their population resides on the South American mainland. Upon
Why?
hearing of this,
Why would you
what?
eat your enemies?
There's many reasons. There's so many reasons. I can't even. We'll get to that probably as well. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't remember if I mentioned it. Basically, for many cultures, it's a ritualistic thing. For many cultures, it's a it's basically a ritual though. It's like for some, it's like you have to respect your elders, so you eat them. For some, it's like you have to kill your enemies and then eat them to get their power. For some, it's just out of spite, out of fear, out
Fuck
of
you, I'm gonna
hunger,
eat
out of
you.
disease. Yeah, absolutely. There's many cases, different cases worldwide. Every single continent has those cases. But yeah, we talked about so basically Queen Isabella of Spain, which many of you guys might know. Speaking of history, like she is basically the reason she's basically the reason Spain kind of is a thing, since they united the crowns of Spain, Castile and Aragon. They ended up with a country called Spain. So she's also part of the reason why many of your friends might be called Isabel today. Like, not even joking. I was surprised to find that out, but yeah,
Because
like
of that
one
one
single
woman.
person. Yeah, Isabella of Spain.
Cool.
Famous queen lady, pretty vicious as well, like smart and vicious, like lovely medieval lady.
We love vicious medieval ladies.
Absolutely. Curious? No, I think we're good. But yeah, give me just a second. But yeah, Columbus was also heavily involved in this as well. So if you want to love or hate the man, because I know a lot of people hate him, especially some more liberal Americans are like, oh, he did a lot of bad stuff. Yeah, there's more reason for you to hate him. If you love him, even more reason for you to love him. I don't give a shit. Up to you. But yeah, he's very much heavily involved. In other parts, cannibalism taught us why it's actually not a good idea. On the islands north of Australia, Papua New Guinea, I guess. I don't know.
Papua
Words,
New
word.
Guinea? I don't know.
Papua New Guinea, something like that, I
Something
guess.
like that. We don't know.
Yeah.
We can't pronounce shit.
You guys can teach us afterwards.
Yeah.
The Fore people, or Four people, I don't know. It's spelled Fore. They basically learned the hard way by contracting a disease known as the Kuru disease, spelled with a K, which means to shake in their language. Basically, what it does is fucks your whole body up, right? It gives you tremors, bursts of uncontrollable laughter, which also gave it the nickname the laughing sickness, which is kind of odd, right?
And they got that from eating bodies?
They got that from from eating bodies, especially the main source of the disease is actually the brain. I
Wow.
think we have something related to that here, but basically, it's a thing called prions. They are an agent existing in a human's brain. So eating it basically often transmits it to like it doesn't have to be. I don't think everyone has it, but I think most people basically do. And this is what usually causes this thing, right? This disease. Uh,
Okay.
so yeah, this also reminded me of the plague, the dancing plague from 1518. It was like, yo, they have the laughing plague. These guys have the dancing plague. Lots of plagues. People loved the plague back in the day.
Plague is cool
But
shit,
yeah,
dude.
Strasbourg, that was the dancing plague, part of the Holy Roman Empire at the time. The reason it happens, yeah, I actually mentioned it. I guess it was the prions in the brain. They ate the brains for ritualistic purposes, which is kind of I don't know. I was like, I guess it's kind of cool. It's kind of metal. I don't know.
I guess back in the day it was
Yeah.
normal. But like
I mean,
looking
the
back
problem
on
is
it,
this
I
was
really don't want to
recent.
eat brains. Wait, was this recent?
This
When
was
was this?
recent. This was not very. This was recent. That's why we know of it, because this happened in like the 1960s. The
Wait,
last case
what?
was it. Yeah. Surprisingly, very, very.
Who goes, let's numb on a brain.
Let's not gonna brain. But yeah,
Yummy.
the reason of it is, um, they eat the brains and everything else for ritualistic purposes, which they did it because relatives would sometimes ask their family members to eat them, because they, in their tradition, it's part like the body needs to I guess stay with the rest of the family or some shit, I don't know. And they ended up
Yikes.
I guess the males would eat the body, and sometimes the kids and the women would be given the brain, because I guess, I don't know, that's probably yummier or some shit, I don't fucking.
I don't want to
And
know.
a lot of women and kids had issues because of that. The Kura disease. It's well documented. Go look into it. It's very fucked up. It's not like one of those like you don't become a zombie or anything, but the body just looks like shit. Just it's horrible. Poor people. Um,
No thanks.
I'm not sure if I would want to participate in anything like that. What about you? Like, if you were one of those people, or would you be like one of those who's like, yo, let's do it. Numb on my body.
In the 1960s, when you know better,
I mean,
or
they
are
might have done
supposed
this
to know
like
better.
for thousands of years. Maybe just recently.
I mean, if someone else wants to eat my dead body, I guess I won't know about it.
Your
Then,
nephew's children, like,
I'm not gonna tell
relatives.
my family like, "Hey, dude, it's cool if you eat my body." Keep me in the family. Just like,
Yeah, keep me in the family. But yeah, the thing with me was just like
I don't want to eat brain. Like, no thanks.
yeah, that is part of it. But for me, it was honestly the idea that oh my, hello, thank you for that. But I would not love to know of my family just eating me and then pooping me out, so I'd have to see the insides of them. Like nephews, like whatever, just like get to eat me and then poop me out. But yeah, in parts of Europe, it became medical fad. So everyone liked to do it, right? Eat mummified remains to treat many diseases, and it was done in many ways. Powders liquefied straight into your gob. Other ways, doesn't matter.
Would they cook the brain?
Bodies, just flesh. This
Oh.
is not the brains.
Oh,
This
the
is
whole
just literally
body.
they like ripped apart of a mummy and like made it in powder. I'm assuming they like medieval meth addicts or something, but it's mummies.
Oh, just sniff
So
the power up, like.
yeah, I'm imagining them sniffing the powder like it's some cocaine or some sugar.
Mummy powder was super popular among the British upper class. What?
Maybe I don't know. Even today,
mummy.
there's like this is I didn't add this into the script, but even today in China, I'm not 100% sure if this is 100% accurate. I've seen it talked about like by sources from China that are both Chinese and foreign, that they almost close to the Wuhan area, by the way, not too far, I think, in the south there. They basically mummify children and then make them into pills, and then some people in like Korea and some other parts like eat them, like super rich, crazy people. Those, the type, and they basically eat them to get like, what's it called, a boner. Boners are problematic.
Wait, what, they do that now still?
Yeah, they still do this today.
Wait, is that even legal?
2020. That what?
Is that even legal?
Probably not, because not a lot of things in China are absolutely legal, because it's a big country, a lot of people.
Yeah, Corona came from eating bodies.
Everything's been
Newsflash.
Googled at this point. But yeah, no, I hope not. Yeah, I got a big bookshelf behind me, so obviously that's where I take all my sources from. I have a fuck ton of books. I'm not gonna lie. I have read a lot of them, but a lot of the sources come from videos, from talking to people, from studying stuff, Wikipedia included. But that's usually just so I can find the name of stuff. Like the sources that I like to use are not really, not really Wikipedia. Those are just like, oh, does this actually exist? How is it called in different languages? Because studying it through different languages helps you get a lot of information together. Because just English sources are just like boring, honestly. They're not bad, but just boring. But yeah, also that miracle cure was added to a chemical company's pharmaceutical index, which is called the Merck Index, which is one of the oldest pharmaceutical companies in the world. So now you know that basically in 1668 there was one of the oldest companies was created that dealt with different medicines, herbs, and stuff like that. So they ended up creating this index, right? And this stuff was added, the powdered mummies.
But this was in the
and
1660s or what?
Yeah, 1668, so
Okay.
17th century.
See, I can accept stuff like that more like way back in the day, but if you say like 1960s, I'm just like, what?
See, that even now, like even then, like the next part, this is my favorite part. I hope this keeps happening and we keep talking about this forever in every episode. But this is your weekly dose of papacy of the Pope.
Oh.
Because every single week so far, we've had a case where we had information about how the Pope was like, guys, come on, chill, stop with the taking out the bodies out of the ground and like using them for nefarious purposes. And this week, yes, the Pope also found out that people would take bodies out of the ground because they started with the mummies from Egypt. Even back then, they hauled ass. They hauled big mummy ass from Egypt.
That mummy ass.
That mummy ass. Like it powdered, like it up my nose, like it up my butt, don't care. And they couldn't get any more. Eventually they ran out of mummies, like the good ones, the easily accessible ones. They ran out of them. Probably the Egyptians were like, let's fucking chill, and they started digging up just normal bodies out of everywhere else. And the Pope was like, guys, stop. He had to make another papal bull, I think, or at least like a edict or some shit.
Yeah, had to make some rules.
This is the third
week in a row.
Third week in a row, the Pope is like, guys, come on, chill. The Pope is basically like that dude. Back in the day, he was like that dude that's like, come on, guys, that's just nasty. Why would we do that?
That's nasty, bitch. Nasty. Stop it. Nasty. Stop it.
Now that you guys understand, sort of like it brought me a thought as well. It's like, now that I hear all of this dumb shit that we've been talking about, vampires, witchcraft, and how dumb people are when dealing with that stuff, it's like, oh no, that person is a vampire because he's sick. Let's burn him at the stake. Or, oh no, that person's a witch because my horse is now a mule. Let's burn that person at the stake, right? Like, I feel like the popes back in the day, as evil as sometimes they were, some of them were cruel. Like, normal laymen, humans, plebs were just 10 times worse.
Yeah.
So I feel like we don't discuss this often enough. Like, people were just fucking crazy. Like, oh yeah, I have like a little rash on my genitalia. Let me just snort some fucking mummy.
Let's snort some mummy. Oh, you've got AIDS. Let's snort some mummy.
Let's snort some mummy. I don't think they had that back then, but sure.
I don't know. When did it start? I don't know. Maybe next week.
Catholics... What? Yeah.
Next week, the myths of AIDS.
No, God, no, please. But yeah, the Catholics and Protestants in France and Germany also made fun of each other, trying to show how the other side are cannibals, which makes sense since the idea of cannibalism as being a bad thing sort of became more popularized after Columbus. Which is also when the religious reformations happened. So we talked about that last week, that at one point every Catholic in Europe was like, fuck this shit, well, almost half of them. And they sort of started making new religions up, right? Which is all cool and good, all that stuff, right?
Do whatever you want.
Yeah, whatever. You do whatever you want, just be nice to people.
Yeah.
And after that, sort of things became more popular because people actually started making books and shit, like what? And there were pictures depicting the enemies. So the Germans would show the French would show the French as well as the Germans as the enemy, eating children, and even in one case, a priest eating his own genitalia. This is not facts about if this happened or not, but maybe it did, surprisingly.
It's just stories.
At the very end, you will see that there's a lot of like, shit that might prove that every single area had like cannibalism in every period. There's so many cases, right? but they showed everyone else depicted them by by eating children, eating themselves, eating others, and so on and
I
so
mean, we
on.
know that still happens. Like, there's still people out there even
Yeah,
today that want to
absolutely.
eat themselves.
Yeah, there are people there even with the vampire disease when we talked about that. I forget the name. It's in the last episode. Basically, some people end up just waking out of a coma that they sometimes drop in, and when they wake up, they would sometimes just start biting their arms off because they were hungry after so long of being exposed to the shit. And sometimes they'd also have, I think, blood dripping out their nose, or like liquids, not even blood, but it looked like blood, right? So that's why vampires sort of, that's one of the many reasons people thought of vampires. So why not? Yeah, this might be real. Also, another medical fact. But yeah, no, I just hope one thing: if they depicted that priest eating his own genitalia, I just hope that it was done in like a cartoonish way, like with nice cutlery, like a little bit of, make him look fancy, like they're like
Just
all
like sitting there with like his little knife.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And
yummy.
another medical fact that bothered me a bit. Yes, everything else didn't, but this did. It was the blood of the beheaded people, criminals and such, was sometimes sold at crossroads as remedies for epileptic people, which means if I screwed up and would be accused of being a vampire or a witch or some shit, they'd probably cut my head off, and some pleb would be drinking my blood like it's a Fanta on a hot summer day right before he has a seizure, and then they'd say my blood bewitched them even more.
Yeah, and then you get beheaded because you
I
drank
already
some
was
witch.
beheaded, but they
No,
behead
I
me a
mean the
second
other
time.
person. The other person
Would,
maybe he will get infected, and now he's also, a vampire by drinking your blood.
I like that comment. After all of this, Dragon's reaction to this is hot.
Hot. Now
Hot.
we know his kink.
Beheading people and drinking their blood. There we go. Dragon's a cannibal. But yeah, cannibalism actually includes not only eating the meat, it includes surprisingly, it's supposed to include like drinking the blood, eating anything that the human body sort of produces, including piss or I guess drinking it.
Wait. So if you eat shit, are you a cannibal?
I guess anything human, basically. It like doesn't make sense to me, but like I looked into some like long ass documentaries, and they're like, yeah, if you do this, you're basically a cannibal. I'm like, okay, no.
Oh, so I guess we have way more cannibals even today than we thought.
Yeah, a lot of people are into like that golden showers and stuff.
Fingernails.
Yeah, fingernails.
I guess.
Right rule says eating fingernails is considered to be auto-cannibalism by some folks, so I guess.
Yeah.
But also, in Europe, German witches apparently were depicted by to also love to eat children and penises. There's a picture depicting them doing such things. The PPs were just sitting like drying on a rack, like getting ready for barbecues and stuff. Like I'm not even joking.
So not even in a kinky way.
If you want, DM me and I'll find the picture. I can't open that, not just yet. And yeah, apparently they like PPs and eating children. Don't ask, I don't know. Yeah. But there's also another case that I haven't included, but I will credit Tony in our Discord communities, Fat Mojo Tony. He reminded me of this case, which is a very interesting one. In the Netherlands, at one point, I forget the exact year, but at one point there was a prime minister that ended up being savagely cannibalized. The reason for it was the dude basically was part of he was a stadholder, not a prime minister, but it's I guess close to it. It's like sort of what a prime minister would be. So he was the prime minister of the Holland area because they had two areas. One would be the kings and one would be the like states.
Yeah.
And the king was like, yo, I don't like you, so fuck you. And everyone was like, we love the king. Like every time, by the way. I think even last week we talked about how people loved the witchcraft stuff. Do you remember the king from England that was super bad at being a king, but everyone was like, can we just have him back? He's like shit, but he's our shit.
We like him. Let's just take him back, even though he sucks ass.
He sucks ass, and people literally like probably one of the bloodiest wars, like the English Civil War. But yeah, again, second case, people just like their kings back in the day. They're like, we respect that man. So they respected him so much that they ended up like eating a dude, and they were pardoned because the king was now in power again. And he was like, oh, fuck it, shit, I don't know.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's okay, guys.
It's okay, guys. So, I have some cases as well, which I don't know, sort of were the most interesting ones that I noticed, starting from the 1500s. But trust me, there are many, many more cases.
I can
You started with
imagine
the
that there are a
1500s.
lot of cases when it
Yeah,
comes to
yeah.
cannibalism.
The further back you go into history, I'm assuming the more you get. Like, we probably have less now than there ever were, but the recorded ones are still many, surprisingly thousands. Just absolutely well recorded cases. Then there's cases that are not as well recorded and are only rumored.
Yeah.
So the first one, 1503, a group of Kizilbash militants, I guess from Iran, ate the corpses of their enemies after they took over a fort in East Iran. Alvar Nunez Cabeza, I think, Devaka, something like that. Some Romanians would be like,
Some name.
what? Yeah, that's like, along with other Spanish conquistadors, committed cannibalism in the aftermath of a shipwreck.
Because they had no other food, I guess.
Yeah, they probably, like a lot of the conquistadors, since these were conquistadors, they just ended up in those places. And imagine you're like sitting there, super tired, you can barely hunt. There's probably not a lot of fruits that you understand or know, so you just, just cannibalism. People are
If you're
already
desperate,
dead. If you're desperate, you gotta eat that pee and those children.
Yeah.
Another case, Peter Stump or Stump, I don't know, nicknamed the Werewolf of Bedburg, from Germany, was executed in October 1589. So this was a German dude, after accusations of cannibalism and other crimes. So, he basically sort of gave a little bit of a werewolf vibe, which will actually be important a little bit later. There you go. In colonial Jamestown, Virginia, some of you guys might know the area, right? Jamestown, pretty famous colonial area. Colonists resorted to cannibalism during a period from 1609 to 1610, known as the Starving Time. So they ate people's remains. They dug up corpses for food. They didn't just eat them. They buried them, but when they didn't have other options.
Okay, so they didn't go around killing people. They just went for the bodies that had been rotting for a while.
They were desperate. They were probably, decent people, just didn't have any other opportunities. Maybe there was literally nothing else.
Yeah, I guess if people have no other choice, they do shit.
There's a case where we mentioned during this period, the same area, a dude basically confessed, after being tortured, by the way, confessed to having killed, salted, and eaten his pregnant wife. And the dude was burned alive as punishment. Again, he's not a witch, yet he was burned as punishment. I'm continuing last week's thing where like witches were more like hanged more often. Like it's more heretical stuff that ended up being, the burning alive was the punishment for that. So just so we don't say that only like cannibalism happens in other places other than Europe. Europe had so much. We already mentioned a couple, right? But in 1612, so the year is 612, Polish troops stationed in the Moscow Kremlin, which is not a good place to be when you're not Russian, because everyone that goes to Russia and is not Russian usually ends up dying, that is in a war with them, right? So they resorted to cannibalism in the aftermath of the prolonged siege. That period was kind of very like famous for like a lot of like Polish and Swedish invasions into Russia. And I'm assuming like most people would basically like camp in Moscow after they take it, and then they'd just like fucking die of starvation or something.
Yeah, probably.
And these Polish dudes are like, fuck it, we want to go home. But yeah, we want to eat.
That's the thing with all these invasions, like all the crops gets destroyed and shit like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The Russians are famous for this. Eastern Europeans are famous for destroying crop fields and poisoning wells. So I wouldn't be surprised if cannibalism happened a lot. 1763, North American natives performed an act of ritual cannibalism on a British soldier during the siege of Fort Detroit, which makes me think they wanted to invoke a Wendigo to screw up the Brits. We will still mention the Wendigo. This is just history parts.
We're getting to the Wendigos.
We're getting closer. I'm trying to, basically, there's still quite a few of these, though, but
it's fine.
We'll breeze through them. How long is this so far?
24 minutes.
Yeah, we're fine. We're fine. In 1816, the French frigate Medusa, it's basically a giant ship, right? A big, good ship, fast ship. So we ran aground off of Mauritania, which is, I think, close to Madagascar, somewhere there. Maybe I might be absolutely wrong, though. If I'm wrong, someone let me know. 147 passengers and crew took to the sea on a hastily constructed raft in chaotic 13 days before they were rescued. The occupants on the raft were driven to suicide, murder, and cannibalism. Only 15 men survived. So 150 were there, 15 survived. That's all they
Oh,
experienced. Following the
that's a
French
lot of
invasion of Russia,
bodies.
1812. This is actually a anachronistic. This was supposed to be a little bit before that, but whatever. 1812. Ill-fated retreat saw Napoleon's soldiers resort to cannibalism when facing starvation in the Russian winter. So you'd be surprised, like how much stuff that is not like you don't know about certain things.
It's not always mentioned that people
Yeah, you don't often like whenever we
went
talk
to
about cannibalism.
cannibalism.
Yeah, for sure. Whenever you talk about cannibalism in these parts of Europe, like you only really mention two things. It's the Holodomor, which is a very like we might mention it in a second as well. It's a Ukrainian, mostly Ukrainian, but honestly, it's like most of Eastern Europe suffered from it. And that's it. You don't really know that fucking Napoleon came around and it was like, "Yo, dogs, let's do this," and then he fucking failed, and everyone was like running away and eating the dude that couldn't survive or some shit. So the Essex, the ship, was sunk by a sperm whale. I only really included this because it had the word sperm whale in it.
You were
and
like,
it's funny,
it
right?
has
Because I'm a
sperm.
right? But it's actually just sperm whales are just like the normal big whales, you know those.
Yeah.
They sometimes are called, I don't know, there's a different name, but you know, whatever.
I don't know what you mean.
Said sperm whale, so I was like, haha, sperm. So in the Pacific Ocean in 1820s, the 1820s. So this is an important one. Keep in mind, right? Why this is important. This happened in 1820. The ship was called the Essex, Pacific Ocean. Most survivors of Captain Pollard's ship spent 90 days in a small whaling boat before, or in small whaling boats before being rescued. 7 of the members who died during the 90 days were documented to have been eaten. Some after they died, so only some after they died. 2 others were sacrificed for that purpose after drawing lots. So imagine you're sitting there, you're drawing a stick, you know, where someone, like a couple of dudes are drawing like sticks, and like that unlucky guy is like drawing the smallest one or the biggest one.
Like, oh shit.
Shit, that would be bad. Like, oh shit. Oh shit.
Oh wait, this was a test. This was a test. Let's redo it.
Yeah, let's redo it. 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3.
Best out of 3.
And I'm just imagining that one dude behind him is like with a like just a pistol, like hits him behind the head. It's like, I'm sorry, dude, it had to be done. So yeah, one of the small boats was found containing 2 survivors sucking on the marrow of a human bone. The marrow is basically the stuff that is
inside.
So they're basically sucking on that like it's a dick, but you know, just it's food. They were doing it for food. Yeah, just
yummy.
The tale of the Essex inspired Herman Melville to write his novel Moby Dick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is you know.
This inspired Moby Dick.
Yeah. Eating people inspired Moby Dick.
Fun, child-friendly story.
Yeah, I destroyed your childhood. Congrats. So another case, which kind of like, again, I studied enough of these cases where I don't really care, but this one was like fucking next level shit. So, again, in university, I heard a lot of cases of different crazy murderers, but I've never heard of a cannibal one. So this was an interesting one. So serial killer Albert Fish caused much debate over whether or not he was insane because he consumed his victims. He confessed to molesting more than 400 children over 20 years. I don't even know how he succeeds with that, but
400 in 20 years without
children
getting caught.
Not children, but it's just, that's crazy. Like, I'm not sure how many of them he molested them. That's not murdering, but he still murdered between 6 and 15 children, which is still like a lot.
Still a lot.
Yeah.
But like even 400, how did none of them like you go, hey, yo, this dude?
Yeah.
Not okay.
Yeah. But the psychiatrist Frederick Wertham described Fish as looking like a meek and innocuous little old man, gentle and benevolent, friendly and polite. So, you know, not always the nice people or the actual safe people, you know, just say, probably.
Often the worst people look the nicest because they are the best at hiding it.
It's like, don't start thinking that people that are just nice are immediately like murderous cannibals.
Oh, she's so nice. She must want to murder me.
Yeah. It's like, I'm nice to someone, thus I want to murder them. I'm not gonna lie. I've been in this situation where I was just nice to a person. They're like, that's not normal. Are you okay?
Are you always this nice?
Yeah, are you always this nice? And honestly, I probably absolutely look like a cannibal. Like, I don't know, like my giant like eye shadow under the eyes, right? That stuff. Like I'm not a very like healthy looking person, I guess. So I'd definitely be counted as a cannibal if someone would be like, is he or is he not?
Nix is 100% a cannibal. Can confirm.
Absolutely, I eat all the. I don't know.
He eats the dick.
I mean, no. no.
Yes.
I would like the chat for a second. No, you're gonna be fine. Don't worry.
Oh, I can't
So
read
the
this.
dude wanted to entrust. Oh, but yeah, the doctor continued. If you wanted to entrust someone to entrust your child to, this person would be the one to choose. Fish's most infamous murder is that of Case Bud in 1928. This is very recent.
Yeah.
Whose flesh he cuts into strips and cooked with carrots, onions, and strips of bacon. So, this excited him sexually. Dr. Wertham described how Fish's account of the culinary process was like a housewife describing her favorite methods of cooking. You had to remind yourself that was a little girl he was talking about. When the same psychiatrist declared Fish mad, Fish disagreed and stated he was just queer. I don't know, it's 1928, so queer probably meant a whole different thing back
Yeah,
then.
probably.
This is,
But
accounts
wait. So the people that he killed, the children that he killed, was
Yeah.
that all like children people knew he was in contact with?
I'm not sure, but it was probably people that he was just like around. Maybe he was like, I don't know. I didn't find the mention of what he actually. I don't think I found the mention of what he actually did, but basically, probably he was in proximity of a lot of younger kids. Maybe worked as a, I don't know, teacher,
Yeah.
doctor, or some shit. So he probably had access to to, I don't know, I don't want to say that. I don't even know what I want to say here, honestly. It's crazy, but yeah, that's besides the thing. It's the dude probably just,
He was
he's
good
one of
at
those like,
hiding it.
crazy people that you make movies about. So make a movie about him. Actually, don't. That's disgusting. But yeah. Whew. Cannibalism was widespread during the Holodomor, which we mentioned, which is known as the famine in Ukraine in 1932 and 1933. I don't have a lot of facts by it from any wiki sources, but I can talk about this probably for an hour, just about this. And I won't, but we might have an episode about just like, I don't know, Eastern European atrocities, war atrocities, maybe World War II shit. I don't know.
Oh yeah, World War II shit.
Yeah, the World War II shit, and the words that the specific word Holodomor, I think, means something along the lines of, from Ukrainian. I think it's translated as I just saw a pussy on your screen. I'm sorry. I think it means golod in Russian. I think this means hunger, and the word more, which I think means like I forget. Ukrainians in chat translate Golodamor. Basically, it's hunger, death.
Okay.
I'm only mentioning it because sometimes you hear these like Holocaust. What does the Holocaust mean? Holodomor. What does that mean, right? So just so you have sort of an understanding, because for me that's the easy way to understand and remember something. So this is hunger and death together as a word. This is what happened. It was a lot of hunger, a lot of death. A lot of people died and ate each other. Women would eat their children just so they wouldn't have to starve to death and stuff like that. And not only.
Oh.
So November 1942, Finnish soldiers, so for our resident Finn-ish people, even though there's probably only one, yeah. The Finnish soldiers discovered the remains of a Soviet partisan who was butchered and eaten by his comrades in Sesjärvi, something like that.
Someplace.
There are also accounts of cannibalism in Karelia during the 1920s in Heimsodat or something like that, the Heimsodat Wars. 1961, in October, the Papuan Aborigines supposedly killed and ate Michael Rockefeller. Yes, he's one of the Rockefellers. Yeah, one of the family, one of the famous ones. He was like 21, 23, I think, when he died. He was exploring the southern Netherlands, I think southern Netherlands, New Guinea. So basically the colonies that the Dutch had in that area. Sorry, what? What did you say?
Oh no, I said okay. I was like, he's eaten? I didn't know a Rockefeller was eaten.
Dude died very young.
Poor guy.
Yeah, and I mean, he's super rich, so he probably had a better life in his 23 years than a lot of people will have their
probably.
Life. But, it's still.
I mean, we still have to feel bad for someone getting eaten.
I mean, his rich, so I'll feel less bad for him, but his.
I hope he was at least dead before they started cutting him up.
I mean, maybe. Let's hope. Yeah, that's at least that. So there are literally hundreds upon hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of cases that can be checked and described. There are cases on every single continent, every single time period. There are cases that will probably make some of these cases seem like nothing. Like when you actually go delve into them, they will shake you. They will shook They'll shake you to the core and
Shall be electrocuted.
try we will now let Kato try to tell us why you should probably.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Coming back to the where we started, so this whole idea came from what the fuck are Wendigos?
Yeah.
And Wendigos are very much related to cannibalism, which is why Nick did this whole explanation of cannibalism and where that came from. Basically, as much as cannibalistic rituals or events as Europe has, only the American Wendigo derives its monstrous origins out of the same activity of cannibalism.
Yep.
Basically, the Wendigo, or also sometimes called a Wentico, is a mythological man-eating.
Can I just stop you here for a second? There's at least I think 400 names for it, but those are the two most popular ones.
Yeah, there are a lot of fucking
Wendigos.
Names.
There's like 400 of them. Every tribe gave them a different name.
They have a lot of different names through a lot of different stories. Yep. But I think the most popular name is Wendigo or Wentico. Now in the culture, like in movies and books and games of today, they always use Wendigo. So I'll be using that name.
We'll be using that,
for this story, for this information, for this podcast. But just know there are a lot of fucking names for this creature. So basically, this man-eating creature of evil spirit from the folklore of the First Nations of the Algonquian tribes.
Algonquin. I guess Algonquin or Algonquian. It's hard.
I can't pronounce shit that I've never heard, you know?
Just imagine Algon, I don't know, maybe like a medical thing, and then queen, like the queen.
Basically, the tribes based in northern forests of Nova Scotia, east coast of Canada, United States, Great Lakes region of Canada, you know, that area of the world. Its influence is said to invoke acts of murder and insatiable greed. Like cannibalism is one of the things that Wendigo is into, and like the cultural taboos that were against such behaviors. Basically, they were, Canada. It's cold as fuck, in some
super cold.
Depends people where died. You are, but
white
still.
People died.
Basically, they were dominant in the areas, or supposedly dominant in the areas where the natives had like long and harsh winters, and where people would often have to lay low and wait out the snow and ice while trying to survive starvation because like crops wouldn't grow and shit. And they would try not to starve with stuff they prepared in beforehand, and like they would be scared, like what would happen if I'm out of food? What will I do? Will I turn
so they prepared
into a Wendigo? Because they wanted to be prepared, because you hear these stories. Would I?
Would you? I definitely would.
You would turn to cannibalism, or what are you saying?
Absolutely.
I have no idea.
I'll probably let other people, like if I'm the only survivor, I'd eat people. But if I'm not the only survivor, it'd be like just fucking yeet me out and make me into a nice
cook me
barbecue.
Like one of your French girls.
Cook me like one of your German barbecues.
Yummy. So where was I?
Speaking of harsh winters.
Yeah, speaking of harsh winters, Canada, the cold regions. The tribes here perfected the survival in the winter for about 10,000 years, give or take. And as mentioned by Stefan Gorman in his book Winter Camping, in here he states that the northern people find an ally in winter. So it's like contradicting stories. The Wendigo story is like, oh shit, it's difficult to survive in the winter, so you're gonna turn to cannibalism. Yet this guy in his winter camping book is like, well, northern people find an ally in the winter.
Yeah.
Because it makes life easier and it's not difficult to move around.
I guess for them, it's from a perspective of a not Native American, I guess he's talking about. I don't know. And like for the Native Americans, it was still harsh, but they sort of adapted to it. They made the winter their ally by
they got used to it. Like it came back every year, so they learned how to deal with it.
Yep.
Like the land was covered in snow and not like plains and hills full of bushes and tall grass to travel through. So you would like make a sled. Sled?
So they made a sled, yeah. So they use the sled to traverse rivers and stuff.
Yeah. So like it's very contradicting. Like the Wendigo story says, "Oh shit, people in the cold areas were scared they're gonna turn to cannibalism," but this guy says, "Hey, they knew how to deal with it." There's also the European and French Jesuits, who who met the natives and traded furs with them and tried to convert them to Catholicism. I can't do difficult words. Apparently, they wanted to convert them.
Yeah, exactly.
The end of the line. And they described the monster as a relative of the werewolf from in Europe, you know. And in several sources, they talked about how it would devour women and children and men all alike with ease, like they would eat the people.
If you actually want to go look at what they talked in there, the book is called, I think, The Jesuit Relations. That's the book name from their first-hand accounts and stuff like that. This is like...
So it's very, like, the natives there, Wendigo stories are very similar to the European werewolf stories, where they would eat people. Which is why we're talking about it, because we did talk a little bit, I think, in a past podcast about werewolves as well. The vampire one. Basically, these stories of these Wendigo that was described as a gowned to the point of emaciation person roaming the woods with desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones, with its bones pushing out against its skin. It's like so ash gray, like a scary... Great like a skeleton man-like creature.
You guys have seen it on video games.
If you've played Until Dawn, you know.
You have at least probably,
You have some idea of what it looks like.
Just imagine a skeleton that's like blue and has a weird-ass face. Not a skeleton face, just weird face. No eyes, but still skin.
Yup, basically.
Go the 1897 one. I think this one's interesting.
Yeah, so basically, through history, there were some cases of Wendigos stories and shit like that, but it's difficult to keep track and know, okay, how much did people make up to scare the natives, or how much did the natives make up to scare the people conquering their lands.
Yeah.
In 1897, there was a case in a Canadian court where the Ojibwe man was convicted of manslaughter for killing a man presumed to be a Wendigo in human form.
So there are cases where people, like in the recent history, people like were like, "Yo, these things exist, and you know they are part of our society." So in Canada, there were at least a couple of cases. Yeah, people and natives would kill sometimes just because they were like, "Yo, this was a Wendigo."
But like, how do you know a Wendigo in human form? I guess they would watch the people and be like, "Oh, I think he's eating a human."
There's many ways. Like there are many ways that they sort of described and like found them. It's like they would sometimes just look at where they lived, and if they lived in places that sort of had bones, like human remains, right? They'd be like, "Okay, this person's definitely a Wendigo. They eat humans."
There's human
some
remains,
cases were like, I don't know, believe it as much as you want, but they're like, "Oh, you could see their eyes are not there. You could see their skin turn blue and stuff like that." You know. Maybe they smoked some weed, or maybe that was true. I don't fucking know. I kind of hope these things are true, because a world without myth or reality, like that myth and reality, is very boring. But you know, it's bullshit. But I don't know. Maybe there's reasons.
So you have the case of the Ojibwe man that was convicted of manslaughter, but you also have many cases of people being sent to psychiatric institutions for an illness that people now call the Wendigo psychosis.
So this is an actual thing.
It's an actual disease. Psychosis.
It was for a while. I think they eventually said it's bullshit. Like the actual psychiatrists were like, "Yo, guys, just put it, sweep it under the rug." But
we never talked about it.
It was a thing. Wendigo psychosis. Look it up.
So basically, Wendigo psychosis was described by psychiatrists as a culture-bound syndrome with symptoms such as an intense craving for human flesh.
Culture-bound syndrome. Culture-bound. So this is a very specific.
So only certain cultures can get this disease?
Yeah, I guess.
So basically, when you have this disease, you crave human flesh and you fear becoming a cannibal, because what will you do if you have no food? And in some indigenous communities, environmental destruction and insatiable greed were also seen as a manifestation of this disease. Like, if you are a greedy bitch, you're a Wendigo, you know?
That's me you're talking about.
Shit, I'm a Wendigo, guys! So basically, in some traditions, humans overpowered by greed could turn into Wendigos, and the myth served as a method of encouraging people to be cooperative and moderate yourself. Like, don't be a greedy bitch, you know?
Yep. Basically, it was like a way up for the people to say, hey, this is our way. Like, for Christians in Europe, it was like, yo, you got Jesus. Jesus tells you what not to do. Like, again, that is less. It was like a way of teaching people, and for natives it was like, yo, if you eat people, which is not the right thing to do, you become a Wendigo. This is less so.
They didn't have the Pope here to tell them, like, hey guys, don't do this.
They had actual smart people telling them that instead.
Here they had guys storytelling, like, hey, don't do that, because you're gonna turn into a monster that eats human flesh. I'm not one of those
people who thinks religion per se is bad, and you know, I hate, like, I'm not one of those people that's just gonna hate on religion and stuff. I congratulate most of you guys that are Eastern Europeans today, by the way. Is 19th is Easter for us. But yeah, the point is that I'm as much as I respect religious, I don't know, the institution, I guess, without the authorities, because those are the bad things. Indians, I have a lot of respect for Native Americans, for the first people, I guess they're sometimes called, because they're very smart. I had some work I did with like some sources, and I was surprised to find out how advanced they were, like culturally. So this is not them being some primitives being like, yo, we're dumb, but we believe in Wendigos. No, they probably knew what a Wendigo was for them. It was probably a more of a, how do you call this? More of a principle. It was like a thing they tell their kids, like, you know, in Austria they tell about Krampus to the kids, so kids don't act like shits. And you know,
in native communities, they were just like telling their kids, like, you better grow up, not being greedy, you better behave, or else the Wendigo is gonna come and you're gonna turn into one of them.
Yep. So yeah, sorry.
Okay. Where was I?
Legendary beasts.
Yes. So actually, many anthropologists believe believe that the concept of a Wendigo only developed after the native people had contact with the Europeans.
That's actually a good line. That's actually a smart thing to mention. It's like, basically, when Europeans come somewhere, they're like, oh my god, guys, listen to this crazy story that Indian dude told me. And they're like just fucking going, like, they're getting drunk or some shit, like sitting by
getting drunk around the campfire.
Yeah, exactly. And Europeans like to exaggerate to all hell, you know, like the one lady that we mentioned in the Witchcraft episode, I wanted to mention, but I think I didn't. She was like, yo, my husband is taken over by Satan because his eyes are red, smoke is coming out of his ears and nose. But the reality was he was just having a tobacco cigarette, which was not a thing they had back then. They bought it.
I heard that story.
But they didn't have it just then. And the first dude smoking a tobacco cigarette, like a normal cigar, his wife was like, yo, priests, my husband is Satan. And they, I think, either killed him or hanged him or told the woman to chill. I don't remember.
I think you did tell this story in the other podcast.
I told it in many cases. Yeah. This was a funny
one. So much like other legendary beasts that we have talked about in the past, or that we will talk about in the future, the Wendigo remains a fixture in pop culture in modern times. Like, the creature has been referenced in sometimes even depicted in a variety of hit shows, like Supernatural, Grimm, Charmed, and even like some television, and even some games. Some games such as Until Dawn, where I learned about the Wendigo and was like, what the heck? Yeah, what cool, is this? And I
honestly, like, while we're still on this, do you mind me mentioning? We're actually finished. You know, finished with this.
Yeah. One more minute and I'm finished next, okay? Oh my god.
I'm sorry.
So and also interesting enough, like, besides the television shows and games where they mention Wendigos, there's also some physical locations that were called after Wendigos, like Lake Wendigo in Minnesota and Wendigo Lake in Wisconsin.
There's a couple of places at least.
Like a couple of places.
We should call one in Moldova here. We should call it like Lake Wetico or something, and people are like, what the fuck?
What?
It's like, Wendigos live there as well? No. And we'll get all the tourists.
Just confuse the people.
But I don't think we mentioned it here, but I had a little thing about the actual origin of the Wendigo
Hmm.
monster the way we have it today. There is one single source, by the way. This is most of the stuff we told you here. It's legit, but it's also bullshit.
Yeah.
Why? Because Wendigos exist in mythology of Native Americans. They're basically sort of the equivalent of werewolves. They share very many similarities. Like for Slavic people, what I found out is Slavic and not only like even Romanian people. I guess one took from the other. You ate a lamb that was bitten by a wolf, you became a werewolf, and then
Yeah.
after you died, you became a vampire. Yes, that's part of mythology. It's crazy. I
Hmm.
don't fucking know. But the thing was, they have a lot of similarities. And thing is, for Europeans sort of generally described it as this creature that is like a werewolf. Native Americans describe it as a creature that is a what do you call it? A owl. It's similar to an
Oh,
owl.
yeah.
So it would basically like an owl is fucking giant. Its eyes sometimes seem like they're not there.
It
Sounds like a furry. It might
basically
be a furry. I don't fucking
it
know.
might be a furry.
Might be a
The
fucking
thing
furry.
with this story about a Wendigo is there are a lot of different stories, and each
Yeah,
story
so many.
describes it in a
Like
different way.
absolutely, because the type that you mentioned, the Algonquin type, those dudes. This is the name for the general. Like if you say Europeans, this is the same thing to call them because there's so many types, like the Ojibwe type, the Cree type, the like every single tribe in like this game that we play Europa Universalis, right? Like all the
Hmm.
northern tribes, most of those are Algonquin tribes, the northern Canadian ones and parts of eastern coast US, and they believed it as a spirit that you could sometimes become and like for them it was more of a like you could be a Wendigo just as you could be like a witch and still go and do your shit sometimes. Like so, yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes we pretend it's like a
You
monster and
could
stuff.
turn into a monster.
Like
You
you
could
could be a
just look
monster in a
human and be
philosophical
a
sense, right?
monster.
Like they'd probably be like, oh, that dude's a Wendigo. Like look, he's evil. Like he fucking beats people up. He like disrespects his like wife, children, and everything,
And
or vice
basically,
versa, and stuff like that. Like this is what the Wendigo was for the natives. Europeans, we kind of made it into a monster. We kind of created something, right? A creature out of it. But honestly, the Wendigo that you have today is created by an American, I think. I forget his name. Wait, let me just one sec. Let me just do this. If you guys want to see Kato go to her stream, I need my source here. It was
basically, I
it's a
think
movie.
for Europeans, when you had enough of someone, you were like, oh, she's a witch, she's a vampire, it's a werewolf. And the
So
Native
the creature
Americans
itself
had.
that you know today is
Hmm.
created by Larry Fessenden. Google him if you want.
Fessenden.
Larry Fessenden, Fessenden.
Hmm.
He basically he looks like a dude that would create that type of monster, and the dude created it, and he said he didn't even like look up how the monster would look like, so he invented this visual representation of a like if you see any modern Wendigos with just like it looks like a human and a deer combined. That's his
Yeah,
interpretation.
that's just
And
this guy's.
yeah, this guy's interpretation, and everyone basically stole that from
Yeah,
2001 and up to this
like
day.
even the Wendigos in Until Dawn are not accurate
Yeah,
to
they're
how they
basically
were in stories.
they're like more human-like things that could be used as monsters, right? But he himself said he heard the story when he was a kid, so this is what he used, and he also used the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark series of books. I think they had a Wendigo story. That's what he combined together, and he created this monster. And there you go. That's the Wendigo that you know and love today, obviously, which probably not a lot of people know and love him, but
It's one of the lesser known myths, I think, probably
yeah, but
compared
it's
to
becoming
like
more and more
witches
popular.
and
But it's not like vampire. It's not
yeah.
zombie. It's not yet there. And the thing about it is, the creature itself is supposed to be more of a metaphysical creature, but we made it into a monster. And what else? Um, yeah, it boggled my mind that this relatively famous monster is just like the stuff that you see in movies and everywhere else is like created by this one dude, because in more recent time it just everything just looks like it's his creation. But there was like
Yeah.
old versions of like X-Men, like I think the first episode where Wolverine from the X-Men
Yeah,
appears.
Wolverine has Wendigo in it.
Wolverine had like his first enemies that he fought was Hulk plus Wolverine versus a Wendigo, which basically looked like a fluffy, like a furry Hulk. It was just a giant
Hulk.
and he was like a Native American that was like supposed to be like infected or cursed, and that's what happened there, or some shit like that. So there's so many sources. This is all related to cannibalism. This is how you become it. Sometimes you're supposed to become it if you have a bad dream, like if you're
Yeah.
I like this one bit as well. Like the natives thought that if your spirit would have an unbalance, if you have an unbalance in the spirit, you could become a Wendigo. For Europeans, there was something very similar. Unbalances for the humors. We call them the humors, which for them back in the day, this was, you know, the organs, the soul, the blood, everything you have in your body. This was they knew it as humors, right? This was basically sort of like, someone could correct me and be like, oh no, it's only the blood, or it's only this. Sometimes they do bloodletting to like balance the humors, right? Balance the everything. And they basically had the same thing, except, you know, when Europeans would like cut people just to let them bleed out to feel better, the Native Americans would probably, like, I don't know, like give them a pat on the head or like a hug, and they'd be like, you feel better.
There. You're better now.
Yeah, like, again, I have a lot of respect for the Native Americans. They're not, you know, the best people ever or the worst people ever, but they definitely have a lot of interesting
Every
stuff.
group of people has good and bad things.
Absolutely. Except I don't know, rich people. If you're rich, though, I love you, and donate to us on Shoutout and Nick's Dix's things, Patreons, all those things. So yeah, this is our thing.
Yeah, this was our third episode on Mythical Bloody OwO's.
Mythical OwO.
Mythical Bloody OwO's.
The name doesn't bother me yet, but I'm not sure if it will or not.
I don't know. We needed a name.
We needed a name, and we got a good one there.
There we go. It was randomly selected.
This you guys might have learned something interesting. If you did learn, so also people that did tell us, did you use anyone's information besides your own and ours?
No, I didn't.
I mentioned something. Tony reminded me. Like, I knew about it, but he's a good fellow, and he like the prime minister that was eaten by the people. From
the Dutchman.
The Dutchman. So yeah, if you're Dutch and you do dumb shit, prepare thy anus to be eaten by your own people.
Oh shit! Well, I speak Dutch, but I'm not Dutch. There
you go. So don't be a prime minister.
Well, I didn't plan on it anyway.
Good.
Okay. Alright, and that was it for today's episode of Mythical Bloody OwO's.